What's up everybody, my name's Scott, and in this video we're going to diagnose this troy-bilt Super Bronco tiller, figure out why it's not running, and get it repaired. So stick around if you have an old tiller that's giving you problems. Overall, this tiller is in very good condition. It was stored under a shed, so it didn't ever get rained on directly, and it was used for many years up until the point where I got it. This tiller, overall, I would give it an excellent rating for general preventative maintenance and care. It was definitely taken care of. Once you've checked out the piece of equipment and you know it's in overall good condition, the fastest way to assess the entire motor is to use starting fluid and turn the engine over with the pull cord and see if it makes any noises like it wants to run. Put a little bit in there. So that test confirms that this engine has spark, it has compression, and if you give it fuel, it will run. So that means it also has air. So the next step that I'm going to do is take this fuel tank off. So for starters, I have to pull out these bolts here, unscrew the oil cap, and this cover comes off. Looking at the side, I have two 10mm nuts that have to come off. There's one more nut holding the fuel tank on this model, so you have to take a 10mm socket on an extension and you fish it back behind the muffler and the gas tank, and you can grab onto that nut. Once the fuel tank's loose, the next thing you need to get loose is the fuel line. So I'm going to take the line off at the carburetor. That gives you the opportunity to use a clamp to clamp it closed. So again, 10mm Eggcorn nuts here. Break these loose. Once you break those loose, you can see the carburetor and the rest of the fuel line. Those nuts hold everything, the carburetor onto the engine and all the gaskets. So put the nuts back on so they don't get lost. The fuel line is the tube that runs from the bottom of the fuel tank right down to the carburetor. So there's just an ear clamp here. So we'll take that off. These fuel systems are all gravity fed from the tank, so as long as you don't damage the line too bad, you can usually reuse them without too much problem. So a little bit of dribble of fuel. I can actually already see just from that little bit that the carburetor is completely caked full of rust. So that fuel line's off, it's clamped off. Should be able to just, yep, take that off, fish the fuel line out, put that back on. Oh, looks like there's a pretty good rat's nest in here too, which is good we took it off. A rat's nest like this will get around the engine and it'll cause overheating and it'll cook the engine. So here's the rat's nest, all the leaves and debris, but what happens is that stuff will get down in the fins of the head and overheat it. Looks like there's a bunch up underneath too. If you get a rat's nest like this, the best thing to do is get some rubber gloves or a brush or something and just gently take it and put it right into the trash can. If you're outside, you can blow it with air, but it throws all that mouse debris into the air in the garage, so you never want to do that because then you're stuck breathing it in. So I'm just going to gently transfer this into the trash, and then if we get this thing outside, I'll blow the rest off. It's actually not too bad. It looks like they were probably only in here not even a full. This is probably this year's nest. If I do that, I'm just gonna trash these gloves and get a new pair. I don't mess with rats. It's disgusting. So we'll take the bowl off, we'll clean this out, we'll make sure there's no more debris in the carburetor. That's gonna jam things up. And then we'll have to work on getting the tank clean. Rusty and gross. So once you're inside the carburetor, this is the float. This is what you know, it's the valve that stops the fuel from flowing into the carburetor bowl. So there's always a little pin that runs through it. So gently pull that pin out, and you can take the float off. As you're taking the float off, the needle comes with it, and it's usually held on there with a spring. So that needle's pretty well wrecked, and I'm sure the seat in here is pretty well wrecked. Ideally, you would replace those two things. For how much this thing's gonna get used, I don't really care. The big thing is gonna be whether or not we can get this debris out without clogging it worse. So I was just kind of digging in this tank, scraping around, and I found this little gem. So I have no idea what that is. It's magnetic because it's sticking to my screwdriver. I don't know if that's a magnet they put in the tank from the factory to try to keep any debris from getting down into where it's not supposed to be, or if somebody else put this magnet in here. But it's definitely a magnet, and it's, yeah, look at all the chunky gross that is in that tank. So maybe they had fuel problems and somebody was like, oh, put a magnet in it. Yeah, that's the first time I've ever seen that. I don't want to waste my tumbling media on it. So yeah, you just put some gravel in there, and then basically you slosh it around on the bottom of the tank, and that kind of helps work it around and break the stuff off the bottom.